Yeah, Warriors, we're taking it down. Raise your voices and stare at this town. We're the champions of craft beer sport. Tolkien audio, we hold down the fort.
So, what do you want to talk about? Matt Robinson with you on a Monday evening. The smoke has mostly cleared. And yet, I don't know that I feel any different than I did in the immediate aftermath of what happened on Saturday night. I do apologize for the fact that we did not have a Monday morning edition of the show. I think you guys know, especially those of you who have been here for a while, that's the tent post. I take a lot of pride in making sure that there will be something every Monday morning. And we had a guest lined up for Sunday afternoon, and that would have obviously served as the Monday show. And I reached out to them sometime Sunday morning just to settle on a time. And they sort of said, yeah, after what happened, I'm not feeling it. And I mostly find that relatable, honestly. And yet at the same time, everyone knew what that show was going to be about. And it was only going to be one of two moods, right? That was only going to go one of two ways. You sort of wish, you should have been able to predict that there was at least a 50% chance that it was going to be the bad thing and that you hadn't committed to doing that. And so I was then sort of left with, well, do I try and chase somebody around? And there's a lot of people now feeling that way to try and get somebody else to do it on a Sunday afternoon. And if I'm being real, I didn't have the energy myself to do one solo. And I've been doing a lot of those lately, and I don't think they're the best versions of TCA. So I don't like to lean too heavily on them. But I could have done that as well. But it was one of those moments where you were sort of, maybe I just let it go, right? Like, we do it where it's a conversation and we can kind of compare notes and see how everybody's feeling about what happened. But if it's going to be just me, let's just let it ride. And so that's what we decided on Sunday, and I apologize for not having something out for you guys on Monday morning. And we will have one of those more conversational shows on Tuesday. Steve Bunda is going to be here, one of our beauts, a guy who never lets us down. He's always around, and we love Bunda for that. So that'll be late Tuesday afternoon, I think, by the time we get that dropped. But we're looking forward to it. But that's why there was no Monday show. We thought we had something set up. It turned out not to be set up. And then on short notice, it was just not going to come together. We are going to have a pint, because that's how we cope around here. This is from the Bosch Kong Brewing Company in Minden Hills, Ontario, not far from where I used to cottage, well, for a long time. The family cottage was in the Haliburton Highlands there. This is the Black Rock Dark Ale. I don't know that I've had this one before. If I do, it's escaping me. But it spoke to me in this case, because that's sort of where my heart's at right now. It's just a big old black rock. But this is 5.5%. It says it's supposed to be kind of got a little chocolate to it and a little whatever, but and it's in the description, but it's coming through more than I thought it would. This kind of dark fruit, like this sort of I'm not sure how like a fruit cake kind of thing up front or something. That would be a little overstating it, but it's kind of nice. Just a dark ale. Yeah, 5% from Bosch Kong. If it feels like I'm not bringing a ton of energy here, that's a reasonable criticism. And I don't know what to do with all of this right now. Like, we all said it. What a fun season this was, and what an incredible playoff ride this was. And it sort of feels like when you take a cruise and you go and you buy the booze package and they give you that card, and then on the last day, you're hungover and you're tired and you have a long flight home ahead of you, and someone slaps you in the face with, by the way, Here's the bill for all the fun you just had. And it's all due all at once. The fun was spread out over a nice long period of time. The pain is all right now. I sort of got that vibe a little bit. Because I think if you sit back, all the players said it. I think we saw a few different Blue Jays, columnists or reporters talking about this idea that after Game 6 and what was a disappointing loss there, that George had sort of said and came in, gave just a very quick speech and said, if anyone would have told us at the start of spring training, you will have a chance to play a Game 7 for the World Series, everyone would have taken it. And of course you would have. But that was before Game 7. You sit here after Game 7. What an empty feeling it is now. You're like, well, I'm not still sure I would have taken it. And even that is overstating it. Of course you would have. This was a fun year. But it was just done in such a gutting way. You had so many chances to finish Game 7. And that's ignoring the dog shit ball lodged in the wall in Game 6. Everything that went into that. There were numerous things in Game 7 that left you just shaking your head. Like Yasavich and Hoffman and Bieber all giving up solo shots. This bullpen has given up home runs all year. And they weren't crushing home runs. This time they were solo shots. Like they didn't decimate you. But 2 out of the 3 guys I just mentioned weren't typically in that bullpen and still found a way to be part of that resounding parade. I don't even know what I've talked myself into here. Of, hey, that's just what this bullpen does. And today I'm a bullpen guy. So today I'm going to give up one back-breaking solo home run after another. And I see the IKF talk, the bad lead off third base. And look, that's relevant. But how many different times had you already had a chance to win it? Like, yeah, that's the last one, but Varsho, how many times was the game on his shoulders and he wasn't able to come through? And Kirky with the double play, and like we can do the thing where you pick individual villains and individual moments that cost you until the cows come home. But it sort of feels like when it's IKF, it's a bit of a scapegoat thing. And that's not to let him off the hook. Look, if you think he wasn't aggressive enough coming off of third base, that's a totally reasonable feeling. I got no beef with you on that. It does have to be taken with the context that Game 6 was ended on one of the most ridiculous double plays you'll ever see when Barger had let off too far from second. So yeah, you're worried about that happening again now that I'm on third with a chance to tie the game. And I've seen the numbers, like what are the odds that Varsho is going to shoot one to third? Not great. But if it feels a little scapegoat-ish. And if you want to do that, like I said, we also have to talk about Yasavich, who we loved, gave up a home run. Hoffman, who struggled mid-season, but had been lights out in the playoffs, fantastic. And he gave one up. Bieber was the nice story we had from the deadline on, and he gives one up. Vladdy had 2 opportunities to make a big difference in that game and couldn't quite do it. We were mad at Bo before the 3-run home run because he was the first man on base and couldn't score on a couple of different hits. Like he was going to force you to single him all the way around because he's playing on one leg. And I only bring these things up not to pile on and not to say any one of those guys is to blame, but that I don't think it's fair that we're scapegoating Isaiah Kiner-Falefa on this. Some of our favorite guys, some of our biggest stars also had missed opportunities in the game to make sure we just weren't ever going to be in that situation. And so you're sort of left with, well, what's the context here and how does this stack up? And I've said this on Twitter now, and I said it on the show to James Duthie, and I brought it up with somebody else later on, that maybe it was recency bias, but that I think along the way here, I might have learned that despite the fact that I think I'm a more knowledgeable hockey fan than I am a knowledgeable baseball fan. And that's not to say incredibly knowledgeable. I'm not trying to say I know hockey. I'm saying in my own world, I probably know hockey better than I know baseball. It's more likely that you're able to say to me, Matt, who's playing third line right wing for the Predators right now? And I can answer that than it is to say who's playing third base for the Reds tonight and have me answer that. And so maybe that's just being a Canadian thing. And I love the Leafs. I love watching my World Juniors. Big into the Ottawa Charge. Like, I am a hockey guy. But the joy that I got out of this baseball season is a joy I'm not sure any hockey season has ever given me. This playoff run felt so good and was so much fun. And the feeling that I took from this loss was so different than anything I've taken on a hockey front. When the Blue Jays moved on to the World Series, I did a show, I think I called it the Joy Pod, although I have yet since then been told I didn't sound all that joyful. Maybe that's just me. It's my personality. It was also recorded in the morning, which is not my finest time of day. And I tried to compare what that run felt like in that moment, the joy I was feeling. And I put it on a level that really only the Olympics had ever reached. Watching the men's relay teams in 96 and in 24. Penny Alexiak and Summer McIntosh. The Canadian women's soccer teams in 21. The Canadian women's hockey team in 2014. The Canadian men's hockey team in 2010. There was a whole list of things that my NHL fandom had never given me. When talking about these Blue Jays, it existed on a level that really only Olympic sport had ever given me. And I'm trying to put this one in context the same way. Like, what does this loss compare to? I'm having a way harder time finding it. And I think a big part of that is influenced by the fact that I'm a Leafs guy. Like, I've seen the Leafs have some devastating losses, and some of those losses have left me sad. But those were a while ago. And like, without even being snarky and trying to be shitty about it, it's now like, it's just another Game 7 loss. It's just another, like, I guess 2022 against Tampa. That's the Nick Paul game. I think the score in that one, Game 7, Lightning over Leafs, I think it was 2-1, and I know Nick Paul scored twice. I don't remember if those were the only two goals, but I know he scored twice, and it was 2-1. I've had people bring up the Montreal one in 2021 where the Leafs lost in 7, and look, that was an embarrassing collapse for the team. And I don't know why this is. You guys have probably heard me say it before on the show. Like, I'm not even saying I'm giving these teams a pass. There was just something about 2020 and 2021, one being in the bubble and one being the Canadian division. They're like, yeah, those were key years for my team, and they should have done better. But the whole world was so fucked up that either I was giving them a pass or I didn't care enough in that moment because my mind was on other things. I have a hard time, it was 4-1 in 2013 for the Leafs, that whole thing. That wasn't a very good team. I guess in that regard, they were similar to this year's Jays in that they sort of came out of nowhere. But everyone knew watching those 2013 Leafs, this is James Reimer and a whole bunch of PDO. This team is not that good. And when Boston beat them, the 3 times they beat them in the playoffs that year, they were kicking the shit out of us. And when we beat them the 3 times in the playoffs on that road to Game 7, we were just squeaking by and thanking James Reimer. And so sure, it's 4-1. That's a devastating loss. And I was upset in the moment. I didn't watch any sports media for several days afterwards because I knew what it was going to be talking about. But is it on this level? I don't think it is. 2017 against Washington, it's the first year for these Leafs. They're all rookies. It's all fun. Washington is, I believe, the President's Trophy winner, if not first in the conference, whatever. No one expected to win that. You took 5 of 6 games to overtime. That's fun. 18 against Boston. It's rough. I'm not trying to downplay it. These were all upsetting losses, but nowadays, the last couple of years, with maybe only the exception of 2024 Game 7 overtime against Boston when Pasternak scores. That one was upsetting because it's overtime. But, getting pounded by the Panthers in 25 and in 23, some of these are they just piss me off now, right? I invested a whole other year in this, and now I'm just pissed. Yeah, this one left me sad. This was fun, and then, like I said, all of the fun stopped all at once, and it was over. And I don't know, baseball, that fun thing that I talked about all year, that it gathers people, it rolls like a snowball when your team is good, and suddenly the whole country is involved. And before I sat down to record this, Sportsnet released their numbers. It said the average viewership throughout the broadcast was 10 million people. That's a quarter of the country. It peaked between 11:15 and 11:45 for the 9th inning at 18 million people. 86% of the TVs that were turned on Saturday night were on this. This is the most, outside of the 2010 Winter Olympic Games in Vancouver, this is the most watched English broadcast of anything in Canadian history. Everyone was in on it. So when I say things snowballed, that snowball could not have been any bigger. And we arrived at the finish line, and the baseball gods were like, "Hi, Canada. Welcome. Here's a big kick in the dick." And you're just left sad. I know not everybody listening to this is a Leaf fan. That's just the view I have when I try and contextualize this. I would imagine if you're an Oilers fan, you had these feelings twice in the last 36 months or so. Get all the way to the finish line. You just can't quite get there. For the Sens fan, maybe it's 2017 Chris Kunitz. It's not the championship. I can't speak for Sens fans. I don't know. Maybe 2007 was harder. To me, as an outsider, you got to the final, but that final seemed pretty much all the way through like it was going to go the other way. Whereas 2017, it's only the conference final, but you're right there and it's overtime. And I it's those things that leave you gutted at the end. I hope you enjoyed this. I am going to stomp it out so hard for you right at the finish line. And I don't know where else to compare. Like, even in the Blue Jays context, 2021, right down to the last day. And that was probably the most talented Blue Jays team of this era. And you get the win on the last day of the regular season that you absolutely had to have. And it's not enough. 2022, it's the fucking Seattle, and it's George Springer running into Bo, and it's blowing the 7-run lead in game 2, but it's the first round, and it still feels like it's early enough in this group's window that it won't be the end. Minnesota didn't have that one moment when you played them in the playoffs in 2023. You just weren't any good, like, in that series. That was 22, I guess, wasn't it? No, that was 23. 24 is the setback, and 2025 was all the things that made it great. Made it so hard at the end. You weren't supposed to be there, and so many guys had career years. And you sit here, and there'll be plenty of time to talk about next year. But is Bo going to be back? Can Ernie Clement replicate what he just did? Can Nathan Lucas replicate what he just did? Can George Springer, at 36, 37 years old, fight off Father Time and be quite what he was this year? The Yankees are getting Garrett Cole back. The Red Sox young guns are going to be another year better. Baltimore is not as bad as they were this year, and we saw that in the second half coming down the stretch when they started to figure it out again. You got to go through all of it again, all summer. And then you got to get in, and then you got to go multiple playoff rounds again, and it's just everything about it. Whether you're looking back at how fun this was and how it shouldn't have had an ending like this, or you're looking forward at how hard it's going to be to get back and do it again, everything about this moment sucks. And I hope you're not sitting there listening to this right now thinking but here's the bright side, or here's the light that's coming. I don't have that for you. I feel like you feel. This sucks. Yeah, but Savage is going to be better. And yeah, maybe. I got time for all of that. I don't think this team's going to be terrible next year. I don't know that it's going to win the division again next year. Maybe you got to go through the wild card round. I don't know. You got to stay healthy. All these things. I don't have it. I don't have the thing to rally around right now. This is just a bummer. And I don't know that we need to sit and pretend that it isn't. I sort of talked a few minutes ago about why I'm not prepared to just blame IKF or blame it. The thing about this team that was so great, and they started it, they've talked about it all year, is what a team vibe they have, what a family vibe they have. Nobody in there is going to take, one guy and point at him. It took this whole group, all those guys I just mentioned, Miles Straw being better than you thought he would, Nathan Lucas, George Springer, Ernie Clement, Trey Savage arriving out of nowhere, Chris Bassett suddenly becoming a fucking bullpen killer. All those things had to happen to get here. If you can wrap your arms around that, you have to be able to wrap your arms around the fact that one guy didn't cost them in Game 7. There were a million different moments where the game could have turned and probably should have turned. And even Game 6, or whatever, stick with Game 7. The catch by Pages, how does that happen? That's going to drop 99 times out of 100, and it just didn't. The pickoff to end Game 6, all of these, we don't need to redo it all. You were there, you watched it. it was like all those things that went right for you during this season and during the playoffs, you had to pay the bill for at the very end. And I'm not one of these people who believes in cosmic forces and paying the bill for karma and this, but it did feel that way at the end. It did feel like everything that went right for you all had to be evened up on the last night. And that wasn't a whole lot of fun. I'm sitting here, I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm going to go watch the Leafs and Penguins. And the Toronto Maple Leafs have been a picture of mediocrity thus far. And I can't imagine that while that team was being let off the hook for the first month of the season because everyone's attention was elsewhere, I can't imagine the Leafs are excited right now that the city of Toronto will now turn its attention back to them and that level of mediocrity they've shown thus far, and those fans are coming back in a bad mood. Where's this team's Ernie Clement? Like, nobody's willing to forgive right now. Nobody's happy to be back here. The Leafs have burned away their goodwill, and now they've avoided the spotlight for the last several weeks. The spotlight is back, and the spotlight is in a bad mood. That should be fun. But I'm sure it's no different across Canada. Looking at your team, you're like, well, like, especially if you're a fan of I guess if you're a Habs fan, you get to be excited. You've been killing it in the first month of the season. Speaking of putting Leaf fans in a bad mood, probably Sens fans too. Watching Montreal succeed is not fun. But half of their wins thus far have come in overtime, and we'll see how real that's all going to be. But all of a sudden, like, even if you were unhappy as an Oiler fan or a Calgary fan thus far or a Leaf fan or whatever it is, you're like, well, that game's pissing me off. I'm just going to flip over and watch the Jays, and that's been fun, and that's been rewarding, and that's been really cool. That little distraction is over. What we have left now, I suppose for some Canadian markets, is a fun Final Four in the CFL. But not you, Matt. Your CFL team sucks too. Cool. I have a PWHL team that was decimated in the offseason. An NHL team that looks like it's just running on fumes of what was supposed to be a really good era. And a long, dark winter ahead. I bet you're glad you tuned in for that. That had to be uplifting. That had to be motivational. I'm sure you're all glad you checked in for the black rock that is my heart at this point. Steve Bunda on the show, probably late Tuesday afternoon, as I said. And we'll get into some other things. We'll get his take on all of this. We did see here on Monday some NHL teams. Nope. That's just where my mind's going. Some MLB teams announcing that they had guys like Alex Bregman in the Red Sox. He's opting out of his contract. The Padres closers opted out of his contract, and that's going to be bit. We're seeing all of these things happen really fast. We'll get Bunda's take on some of that. Maybe the CFL playoffs, certainly the NHL, and any take he may have that is hopefully slightly more optimistic than what I just dished out for you around the Blue Jays. It was a fun year, and I think, like I said off the very top of the show, you have to go with the players when they say that thing that they said before Game 7. If you had told us in March, we will be here, you would take it. And the ride was so spectacular, and that was 6 months long. Of course you take it. But man, the ending, it's just brutal. You got to pay that bill at the very end. And that's what we're doing right now. We'll wrap it up here. Thanks for listening. Sorry for being a bit of a downer. This was anything but a joy pod. I wouldn't call it a rage pod. I don't know, sad pod. Bummer pod. Maybe it doesn't need a name. You got feelings. You know what you're feeling right now. You put your own descriptor on it. My name's Matt Robinson. We'll catch you on the next one with Steve Bunda, and we'll see you then.
Yo, yeah, warriors are taking it down. Raise your voices.